Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the April the 11th Administration and Operations Committee meeting. Attendance has been taken, noting that everybody is in attendance this evening. Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything to add? Councillor Chambers and then Councillor Miller.
Just, through you, I would like an update from the general manager with regard to some of the construction projects, particularly the one in Falkland with regarding the roundabouts.
Councillor Miller.
Yeah, question under other business, Mr. Chair, regarding natural gas.
Anybody else? Okay, with those two additions, approval of the agenda. Councillor Oakley, Councillor Coleman, questions? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest, if you have any, do so now, or if one's come up through the meeting, just let us know at the time. Adoption of the previous minutes. Can I get somebody to put that on the table, please? Councillor Oakley, Councillor Bell. Any questions on the previous minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we will move on. Consent items to be approved. We have a few of them in here. We will start off with 7.1.1, which is RPT-0179-23 for the East River Road resurfacing. Can I get a mover to get it on the floor? Councillor Coleman, Mayor Bailey. Any questions on that? Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's more of a question about scope, and it comes from my fairly regular rides down East River Road, and it looks like this piece of the road is not the worst piece of the road in terms of being looking for repair. A question to the General Manager: when will we repair the section from Blue Lake Road to McLean School Road, which I think is in much worse condition?
Mr. Walton.
Through the chair to Councillor Bell. When we do the needs study and put together the plan for roads, you're looking at doing different applications on different roads, and when they're in different shape, you make different decisions on them. So the section you're looking at certainly has some concerns with the actual road platform and its condition. Also, there's some sections on there that have some slope stability issues in line, which we're actually looking at as well. So it's not quite as simple as saying this road's in worse condition, we can do that now. So for this section we're looking at here right now, it's at a point in its life where we can do certain works and bring it up to a very high standard, and that's what we're doing. And all of them are put through that sort of process. If we had unlimited money, there's all kinds of other things we could do, but that's the process we do right now. And we do yearly to report on the needs study and the state of the infrastructure, and this all falls out of that.
Follow up, if I may, through you to Rob. Did you have a time frame then for the repair or upgrade of that section of road from Blue Lake Road to McLean?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell, I don't know the timing right off the top of my head, sorry. But I could get that in the future.
Any other questions? Okay, I do have one question on this one here when it goes to the different contractors that put their bids in. I know we've had Branco Construction before do some work in the county. Can you just let me know what work that this Cox Construction Limited has done? Because that doesn't ring a bell to me that they've done work for us before.
Yeah, through the chair to the chair. Cox Construction is a reputable, fairly large construction company out of the Guelph area, and I don't know when the last time they actually did work in Brant County, but they certainly do a lot of work in the area.
Okay, no, I just didn't recognize that, and with 10,000 difference, I just
yeah. No, actually, our staff is you know, it's not they aren't pleased with other contractors, but they certainly were pleased with this contractor bidding and getting work in this area.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no more questions, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.1.2 RPT-0113-23, the low volume road rehabilitation. Can I get a mover? Councillor Miller. Councillor Oakley. Questions? Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think partially answered with Councillor Bell's question, but about how the decisions were made, which roads were prioritized in this contract, because quite honestly, I saw mine on there and it didn't feel quite as bad as some of the others in the area. So I was a bit surprised to see it there, but curious as to how we prioritize. Thanks.
Through the chair to Councillor Garneau. So there's really two parts to this contract. There's the gravel hard surface, where we're taking a gravel road, making it hard surface. And then there's the maintenance part of the rest of it, where there's already hard surface and we need to keep it going. So that's a decision made on the condition of them. But the gravel hard surface has had quite a long history here. I'd say about 10 years we've been working on this program, and there's been many reports to council on it where they've prioritized based on different criteria as to which roads should be graveled hard surface. And if we, trace the breadcrumbs back through them, you'd see how this list came up. And, the latest ones, we did the decision package to council to talk about putting, what amount of money we put in there. And then we put the list in there as to what ones would come to the top, and based on the amount of money we had to spend each year.
Sorry, I should have clarified. That's on the ones that are being rehabilitated, not converted.
No, the ones that are going from gravel to hard surface, there's been a plan for a long time as to which ones were happening there. The ones that were actually just maintaining the hard surface, that's the road supers looking at them, knowing where they think that there's issues.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.1.3 RPT-0151-23, the construction, demolition, and asphalt shingle diversion from solid waste facilities. Get a mover. Councillor McAlpine, Councillor Bell. Questions? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does that price for $300,000, does Try Recycling come pick it up?
Yes.
Okay. It's neat when you go there. Big recycling pile for demolition material. My only suggestion, maybe you could pass this on to Matt, is they should have a sign or a list of what goes in that pile, because they have tiles, wood. So one would think that laminate would go there, but apparently it doesn't. And the fellow that works there isn't always there to tell you that. So that was my mistake.
Thanks for that. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.1.4 RPT-0057-23, the 2023 tax rates. Get a mover. Councillor Coleman. Councillor Oakley. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, 7.2, consent items to be received. Does anybody want any of them pulled? Councillor Howes?
Thank you, Chair. 7.2.3, the Grand River Street North Land Work Update, please.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'm looking for a mover for 7.2.1, .2, and .4. Councillor Oakley, second. Councillor Kyle, any questions on any of those? 7.1, 7.2.1, .2, and .4. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Howes for 7.2.3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you two staff. First, I just wanted to say I appreciate the communication on Grand River Street North. We get a lot of questions about this. We're going to get a lot more questions about this. On the topic of questions, I had asked staff today about, I didn't know what a PRV installation was. When they talk about there's the illustration that we've seen that nicely shows all kind of the different spots. Some of the projects are to be determined in the future. The one kind of right on the hill going up Grand River Street North, it said this year, PRV installation, which is a pressure release valve, apparently. And I just wanted to confirm with staff that that's not digging up Grand River, like a long stretch of Grand River Street North for weeks and weeks and weeks. Am I correct in understanding that that's probably a like 100-foot stretch of pavement that gets worked on kind of specific days, doesn't necessarily tie up things too much? Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Howes. So you are correct in that this is not a long stretch, probably a bit longer than 100 feet, but it's not 100 meters or anything like that. So I'm not sure the exact length, but when this is going on though, there will be some period of time where there is traffic control there for sure. Because what happens is that, so this is actually a pressure reducing valve, not a pressure relief valve. It's pressure reducing valve between the two zones, or the higher pressure zone, the lower pressure zone. This is a works that is replacing something that already exists in this area that's in a worse spot in Grand River Street North. So this is an efficiency thing for the future, and it needs to be replaced anyway. So ahead of doing other major works on Grand River Street North, we want to get this piece of work out of the way to, you know, for the benefit of the long-term operation of the water system, safety of employees, and the like. But there are a few weeks of construction here, and there will be, for periods of time, there will be lanes blocked.
Thank you. And if I could follow up a little bit, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chair. So that kind of information is valuable and appreciated. I'm wondering if we could ask staff to work with our communications department to turn this into a public facing illustration and a messaging that we could share with the community. There's a lot of people, you know, most people don't read our detailed packages and agendas. This is it's good information, and if we could, if the county did a social media blast on this, and if we were in a position to be able to share it to people, I think it would pre-answer a bunch of questions, and you know, the more people know, the better.
We can get that to Melissa.
Yep, that's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
I need to backtrack a little bit. I didn't get a seconder for 7.2.3, if I could. Mayor Bailey, thank you. Okay, so you're good with those answers then? Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Rob. Just following up on what Councillor Howes mentioned about work in 2023. Am I correct in reading that the water main between Scott Avenue and Bradbury Crescent will be replaced during 2023?
That's correct. The deep sewer and the water main, some other utility work in that area is what is planned.
So what does that entail? Does it entail digging up the road?
Yes, there will be a lot of road work there, a lot of digging up the road, and then we'll be, for the way this construction work is, where we actually dig up the road, we'll be putting in temporary roadway back in there until we actually do the 4-lane construction in the future.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, so in terms of impact on the community, this is going to be much more impactful than replacing the PRV.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions for 7.2.3, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, moving into staff reports. 8.1, RPT-0146-23, Brant celebrates Culture Days. Can I get a mover? Councillor Howes, Councillor Coleman, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.2, RPT-0136-23, Special Events and Temporary Patio Allowance Program. Can I get a mover? Councillor Kyle, Mayor Bailey. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.3, which is RPT-016-23, review of the Grand River Street North at William Street and King Street, Colburn Street West, Bishopsgate Road. Mover. Councillor Bell. Seconder. Councillor Oakley. Questions on this? Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you. I have a comment, if I may, and then some questions. I want to thank staff for this report. It's long awaited, and I'll speak more to the Paris Junction and the Burford Junction. I'm sure my Ward 4 colleagues will deal with that one. But given the severe physical limitations we have in that junction, and given that the golf course is now starting to build and the Nith Peninsula will soon start to build and traffic volumes are going to grow, we should use every possible opportunity we have, every possible technology, and I'm fully supportive of this. I was a little surprised with the consultant's report, particularly on his observations about the western approach across the river, saying that there was no problem, because that's actually the area which has typically the longest tailbacks. So it just kind of undermines the confidence I have in the consultant's report. Now to my questions. Do we have any experience from other municipalities with artificial intelligence in this application? And can you give us a sense of the impact we're likely to see on the junction of William Street and Grand River Street North?
Who can answer that? Mr. Walton?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell, I'll start and Greg can chime in. This artificial intelligence technology for signals is an evolving technology. It's been around for a number of years, but it is improving. If you had asked me 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said don't go there, because there was issues with weather and the like that impacted the technology they're using at the time. So my understanding now, from what we've heard from other municipalities and from the salesmen and like that sell this, is that they've, through the ways that they're counting the lengths and whatever, that a lot of those problems have been solved. And that's why we're willing to go forward on 2 intersections and try that at this time. I do want to make one comment though about, you don't have confidence in the consultant that did this. The consultant that did this actually was out there during that window of time and observed. This is what he observed and counted during the time. So it's a window of time, and what was observed then. You can go there at other times and see other things. I've driven through that intersection many times at peak times and had no problems. And I've seen it at other times where for short periods of time there is a big problem. So it's the window of time, but I think it is a good estimation of what is actually happening there at the time. What this, for Grand River Street North and William, and for the other intersection at Bishopsgate and King Street, what this is going to do is, it's through the information we constantly gather, it's going to slightly change the cycles of the lights and optimize what's happening there. You have to deal with the traffic that's there. So if you have a leg that's not being used at the time, it'll actually shorten that leg, and it can lengthen legs of it too when you're seeing the backup. So I think this is the last thing we can really do there without doing major improvements, which are not in the books at this time to be considered.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Rob's point there about this is the last thing we can do actually prompted me to ask the question, are there any other options we have at our disposal to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of this junction? And a couple come to mind, and one is the removal of angled parking in the main street here. In the consultant's report, he does point to that as being one of the causes of excessive queuing. So I think he gives a very strong signal to us, and it needs to be thought of when we come to look at the downtown Paris master plan, that here is a consultant saying we should get rid of this angled parking if we want to improve the through flow in Paris. But I think on a bigger note, we are seeing the beginning of big developments in the south, more in the north. The traffic flows are going to grow. This is an optimization. It's a tuning of something which is very difficult to improve. So my question is, are there any other physical changes we can make that will allow us to improve the effectiveness of this junction? Because if we look at the master transportation plan, it's very clear. It says even with a western bypass, we're not going to overcome the congestion downtown. So it is a big issue that I think we need to face. Now, when we talk about the master transportation plan later, I will bring forward a proposal, but I would like to hear from Rob and maybe from Greg. Are there any other things that we can do? I'd like to feel that we in council are being presented with a complete menu of options that will improve the efficiency of that junction. And when we run out of options, then that points us to the bigger changes that we'll have to make in terms of bypasses.
Mr. Walton?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell. So, yeah, you bring up the point of angle parking or the things there. For 2025, as you read in the other report, we're working towards that project, and this council will see what the proposals are for that, and that's important. That's really the other things outside the intersection that impact this intersection. So at this intersection, this is really the last thing that we can do there without making dramatic changes, except those other things which we plan through the transportation master plan as far as other things to help divert traffic away from there. The one thing I would like to say though is, and I talked to council about this back in November when we adopted the draft transportation master plan before it was put out to, actually that was last September, before we put it out for the public consultation. And in that I talked about the level of service for these intersections, and we actually did that. The consultant in this report for the different legs there actually reported on the level of service at the peak hours, and actually at this intersection, when you look down through them, most of them are very good. And what we will see as there's more development there will be some erosion of that as more traffic comes up. But at this intersection, there's only one, which was a level of service E, and E isn't the same as being at school. Level of service E is actually still acceptable. So it's not great. It's not what we would go towards, but this intersection is operating very well for the constraints that we have. So we need to keep that in perspective as we talk about what we're doing here. Some of those cycles and whatever, some of the legs of it, level service A. That's impressive actually. And I think the changes we've made there have both made this more efficient, and the well thought out part of it, separating out the pedestrians from the turning movements, making them way more efficient. And you saw in the consultant's report here, I don't have it right in front of me, but he did note the number of people that did cross when they weren't supposed to. It was way down from what it would have been in the past, way down. So public safety is being improved there. Those people are really taking their lives in their own hands, but that also then improves the traffic too, because then they aren't out in front of the traffic that's supposed to be going, holding them up. Because when you got a 30-second queue there where you got to get, I don't know, X number of dozen cars through that intersection, you get a couple of pedestrians that start holding them up for 10, 15 seconds, half the cycle, all of a sudden your efficiency goes out the window. So I think we're seeing some things there through what we've done there that have really, really, really improved this. And I think we need a period of time here to see how this works now. And then, we've agreed to pilot these two intersections, the artificial intelligence, to fine tune it that much better. And actually the reports from that Greg can help me out with this, but I think that the operation of it, will be set up so that it actually tells us what it's doing to change it.
Yeah, I don't want to appear to be negative. I'm very pleased with all that's gone on. I'm pleased with this development. But when I look at the consultant's report, he does actually say the delay level of service is E, grade E. The capacity level of service is grade E. And E, as I read from the report, means poor. It doesn't mean great, it means poor. And my concern is it's poor today and things are only going to get worse in terms of the traffic volume. So, I want to be planning ahead. I don't want to have to fight this one all the way. I'd rather we got ahead of the curve and tried to deal with the problem before the problem arises. I'll stop at that. Thank you.
Anything you wanted to add, Greg?
Through the chair, thank you. To Mr. Councillor Bell, I believe Rob Walton has answered many of your questions. I think a couple of the things that I'll highlight is that we did see Peterborough. They test piloted this with great success. I know we'd like to look in the crystal ball and say how this is going to improve the intersection. That's not possible, but I would like to point out that there's two types of AI technology. There's an AI technology where it's taking in data and it'll give you a report and tell you how to adjust the intersection at a later date. We are proposing a different AI technology that is real time. So if we get a butter tart festival or we get something that is out of the ordinary, this will make real-time decisions in the field and start adjusting traffic for what's at the what's happening at the time. So I think when we're looking at stuff and your council is asking and residents are asking us to be ahead of the curve, I think we're doing this by seeking out the best technology.
And I guess just to, Councillor Howes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just this dialogue prompted a recent memory for me that's relevant. So on the weekend, I was visiting the Maple Syrup Festival, and I was in a coffee shop downtown. And a resident of Paris came up to me, and she said, "There's a serious problem with this intersection with people turning right on the red light, despite the signage." And she went on to say, and this person's a lawyer, and I would hope, well, anyway, she said that, so she took it upon herself to stand in the crosswalk and put her hand up to stop the cars, which is a very scary situation. And so my question is two-part question. Through this AI technology that you're describing in the real time, when we know that we're going to have a maple syrup festival that's going to change the way traffic works, or when we know that there's going to be a butter tart festival going on, can we change the settings so that it does its AI job differently, more appropriately? And then my second question is because she asked me, and because I was concerned about this conversation with this lady, is there anything we can do differently with the signage to make people read them? Like I said to her, how do you fix people that don't read? And again, she's a lawyer. She understands that, but it's at the same time she's standing out in the middle of the road telling cars to stop. So any suggestions on that? Either of those?
Greg?
Through the chair to Councillor Howes. Okay, so the great thing about the AI technology is we don't have to prompt it for what's going to happen because we don't necessarily know what's going to happen. So what will happen with this AI technology, it will be looking at what's happening in real time and it will make those adjustments. So we don't have to prompt it to look for that because it will be looking for that while in operation all the time. So that's something that we don't, where that other AI technology I was talking about, we'll call it the lesser of the two, we would have had to go in and pre-plan that and put in those parameters. Now, the AI technology will only make recommendations and changings within what is approved, like through the OTM. So we're not going to get something crazy. It's all going to be within what is permitted through, best recommendations. And it will pick up the traffic. If the north-south is the heavier flow that day, it'll tack on extra seconds for those areas so they can queue faster. And with this technology, when positioned correctly and the road alignments are correct, it'll be able to look 500 feet down the road to see what the queuing is actually taking place. So it'll be able to really optimize traffic movement. Again, though, there's still limitations. It's like a Blue Jays game getting out. When we have these big festivals, there's going to be congestion. And it'll improve it, but it's still going to be congested those times. That intersection's over 100 years old, and it wasn't built for 20,500 cars per day. And that's what I like to point out to people when I ask them, what's your estimation of this intersection? So they don't realize it's that volume, and that's on a regular day, not during a special weekend. And then, I'm sorry, what was this? Oh, and then the reading of the signs. Now, this is something that we've worked with the communications team. For the folks that walk downtown regularly, we actually had billboards made and set at the counters, and people would lean against that while waiting to jaywalk. Now, that was happening quite a bit in the beginning, but as Rob has pointed out this evening, we've seen a great, more compliance and a greater use of the Barnes dance in a proper fashion.
Last one, yeah.
Yep, last one. Just to clarify, the situation she was describing was the opposite. It's
the cars.
It's the car. So in this case, cars were, I think, becoming impatient.
Okay.
because they were diverting around part of downtown being closed for the Maple Syrup Festival. So cars that had come across the bridge or whatever direction, they were turning right on red when they weren't supposed to. She, as a pedestrian who had the right of way, was trying to control their behavior.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. So yes, we did put additional signage. The do not turn on right is right beside the red light, and it's not written out. It's an actual do not turn. So I don't know what else we could do further to that. But in saying that, we never stopped trying, and we've through Brant Safe Streets, we've brought it up to the OPP, and they have done some focus patrols down there trying to catch people turning on the red light.
Councilor Chambers.
Just two things. First of all, to the don't turn right on the stop when the stoplight is red. I'm not sure where it was, but I think it was Ancaster. I came across a situation where rather than a regular don't turn right on, it had a large flashing with red and white arrows, etc., saying do not turn on a right. It was very visible and it stood out. So I don't know whether you've ever seen those signs somewhere. I think it was in Ancaster. It could have been Woodstock. It could have been Kitchener. I forget where it was, but it was very noticeable. So that's just for information. My other question through to Rob and Greg, with regard to the Bishopsgate King Street intersection, what happens there a lot is cars will pull up beside each other and try and figure out who's going where. I'm just wondering if the artificial intelligence reacts to that situation or whether that confuses the artificial intelligence and may make it worse.
Greg?
Yes, through the chair. So we are actually working with the consultant on that to understand how it reads the corners, the intersection for those turning movements. I do not believe it would confuse it. I believe it would take, this AI technology is incredible. It will tell us how many pedestrians are moving, how many bicycles, how many cars. So I do believe it has that ability to differentiate that, but I can confirm that at a later point as we work through this process of hiring someone to implement.
And Mr. Chairman, I look forward to the time when artificial intelligence can replace the people around the table here and we can stay home and let that figure everything out.
I'll leave that one alone. Councilor Miller.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on the Bishopsgate King Street intersection. This AI technology isn't being implemented because of concerns brought up. I fielded a few, passed them on. And the consultant did an on-site study back on October 25th. And now that's a static study. It's one day. This is the traffic for that day. If we go back to October, St. Mary's Gravel Pit it's not running at full capacity yet. We have employment lands just a bit south there, 53 there. I think they've all been spoken to. One of those is a truck depot, another truck depot on Bishopsgate. And what we're seeing, and it goes a bit back to what Councillor Bell was asking, the future, right? We see it coming at us. And I'm just wondering, at what point do we have to go beyond the AI sensors and widen the intersection to make actual improvements there? Councillor Chambers mentioned, cars pulling up beside other cars. And I know if you're heading northbound, there is no other lane there. It's just the one lane. There's no turning lane. And I've had a few complaints now from people saying there should be a turning lane. So are we going to wait until we receive multiple concerns as the traffic's increasing, or is there a plan to actually address some of these things in the near term as things are being built up?
Rob?
Through the chair to Councillor Miller. So this is a snapshot in time. It's the date, and we look at the future through things like the Transportation Master Plan and traffic impact studies that are done for development and the like. This is a signalized intersection, so they're not looking at whether we're putting in signals or we've got others where we're looking at the improvements we need to do. As we see through development proposals are coming in or other increases in traffic, we will make other suggestions for how this would be improved. This is a fine tuning of the intersection. And actually, if you look at this one, the level of service isn't on quite a few lakes. It isn't terrible. So we're doing, I don't think that the accidents there are some, but it's not that bad. So yes, for the future, we'll be looking at things there. My guess is when there's more development in the near area there, we'll probably be looking at whether a roundabout is the future for this intersection. But that's going to be $3+ million probably. So we looked at what we had to spend this year on the budget, and it was a tough go. We need to plan those things out for the future, so when they can happen. So yes, we've got a number of intersections which we're looking at as to where we need to do improvements. This one doesn't key into the now portion for doing those next set of improvements. We're doing the fine tuning now. We've got a good level of service, and we're gonna fine tune that for the current operations and look out to probably the 5-10 years as to when that next big improvement will be done there.
Councilor Miller?
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm not looking at $3 million to put in a turning lane or some paint. So, anyways, I'll leave it at that, but I will not waste an opportunity to bring it up. So,
Any other questions on that report? Okay, I think just one quick comment I want to make in regards to the Grand River Street, North William Street intersection there. I think this is absolutely the next step to go here is this AI. I think from what I've heard about it, it's amazing. People talk about, as they say, the queuing in cars. And if you got something that's intelligent enough to give the north-south an extra 5 seconds or 10 seconds, I think that's the way we have to go, because if we look at it honestly, there's more physical restraints on that corner than there is anything else. There's things that cannot be done to that. And to Councillor Bell's point there is going to be more traffic. 100% there's going to be more traffic. So I really think that this is a fantastic next step, and I appreciate the work that's gone into this. So that being said, no other questions, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.4, RPT-016-23, traffic calming policy. Can I get a mover? Councillor Bell or Councillor Oakley and Mayor Bailey. Questions on this report? Councillor Howes.
More of a comment, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, quickly.
Just to staff, really appreciate the ongoing efforts to combat this problem. When you read through the reports that were attached to this agenda item, there was a report from 2019, there was a report from 2 or 3 past reports, and when you read through them, you see this literal history of many different efforts to try to take care of a problem that is at the very least a perceived significant problem within our community. Some areas more significant than others, and I just with this most recent list of possible traffic calming measures, it just shows the people of our community that like we never stop trying, because some of the things that we've tried in the past have had more success than others. But I'm very pleased to see the new ideas coming forward, the road dieting and all of those things. Just it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to reiterate what Councillor Howe said, I think it's a great report. It's very comprehensive. I particularly like the severity index proposal. Fully support that. I think it's a good way of taking the emotion and the opinion out of the issue. And people think the car's driving at 70 miles an hour, 70 kilometers an hour, sorry, going back to England, 70 kilometers an hour, and it might be 50. So this is, with the data we have now collected and the analysis we do, we can actually bring some fact-based thinking into the prioritization of the issues we have in the county. And as ever, I'm anxious to actually move to action. So I would like to see the severity index play out. And I asked Greg earlier if he would be able to show a snapshot of what it might look like and give us some sense of where the real issues are, where we need to place our attention. And beyond that, what would be the preferred course of action from this suite of measures that we've got in our traffic calming policy that you would apply to these issues. And just to round that off, do we have enough money in our budget to deal with it in a pace that is appropriate given the issues that we have in the county? Question to Greg.
To Greg?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell. So thank you for the kind words about the report, first of all. So we do have a priority ranking system, and what we've done is we've looked at the community as a whole, and instead of naming off a bunch of roads, what I did was I looked at the communities and where we have the top 25. So I'll give you a little bit of a background first. We have 234 locations on our priority listing right now. And of those 234 locations that we've done speed studies for, some of those will take into account many requests just for the one location. So there could be several hundred residents that represent these 234 locations. 30 of these locations of the 234 score 60 or higher on our indexing. So when you see that form that's in this report, 60 is an area where we start to have some concern about what's taking place in that road. And there's a whole list of reasons why we would have concern, whether it's located near a school, old age home, the accident history. There's a bunch of data here and hard facts, so it's a very unbiased scoring system, we feel. So I know we're looking for where does it affect the community, so I'm going to give out some numbers here. I encourage the councillors to reach out to me if they would like to talk about actual roads more in depth at a later time. But I'll start with the highest, Mount Pleasant, Oakland, and the Onondaga areas. 13 of the top 25 places are within those communities. Second would be Paris, who has 9 of the 25. Third would be St. George, has 2 of the 25. And rounding out 25 would be Burford with 1 location. So those are of the top 25 spots. And as I said, 30 of the locations of the 234 score 60 or higher on the indexing. The one issue with all of these areas that I've talked about, none of these are local residential roads. They're not built into residential areas where these traffic calming solutions that are brought forward in this report, you generally see. You see them off on areas like Arlington or Cobblestone or some of the side roads in our other communities. What these top 25 are either rural roads where people are doing excessive speeds, 30, 40 kilometers over the speed limit, or the major arterial roads into Paris, say Silver or Pinehurst or some roads. Oh, so not Pinehurst, Paris Road, as an instance. So I'd be more than happy to discuss any of these with any of the councillors. And of the 234 locations, we have priority rankings that start as low as 1 and go as high as 79. So we do feel it's a very good snapshot of where we need to focus. And if I may add to this, for the Brant Safe Streets, we're ever evolving. One of the new things I'd like to look at, instead of just focusing on speed, which we're kind of talking about here, is about overall safety. So through our partnership with OPP, we are going to build another working group that has an accident working group where we actually a collision working group where we actually look at where collisions are taking place within the community and the cause of those accidents, and see if there are instances that we can engineer against. Is it sightline issues? Is it things that we can actually change, or is it distracted driving and it's an enforcement issue? These are where we're really going to get down in the details and make things better.
A quick follow-up. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate all that. Could I then ask at some time soon, could you bring a report to council which illustrates those 234, gives the priorities and gives us a sense of what you are going to do about it, from your list of traffic calming measures and whether you've got enough budget to deal with it in a reasonable time.
Rob?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell. I think for this year, our plate is pretty full. I think that as we do, towards the end of this year and do our budget for 2024, I think that we would bring that up as a part of the decision package. What the priorities in this and where we think we need to go in the next one. But for this year, our plate is full. What we've got to do. So I would suggest that as we get ready for the 2024 budget, we consider it then. Bring an update in that as far as part of Grant Safe Streets and then what we would suggest to do with changes in that budget.
So if in terms of communicating that to the public, because you had 700 requests from the public, there's a lot of people want to know what you're going to do. So is there a way of giving some feedback that says, this year we're concentrating on these areas, next year we expect to move to others? There's a bit of a vacuum at the moment in terms of where we're going with Grant Safe Streets strategy. We talk about it, we all laud it, we all push it, but it's got to have a closure at some point. Not totally, but item by item, so people have a sense that really things are happening.
So through the chair, I'll part of this package and about the communication piece and back to the residents, there's a feedback form on here. And that is a big part of closure with residents. Now, they would get a phone call. Now we're actually going to mail or email them a form along with the counselor, what we found for their road and whether something is going to happen or not. And that should close all of this off. And then if things are required for their road, we will inform them at that time that we are going to do something, and this is what we'll propose for your road. So this is all part of making communications better. And I'm looking at not going all the way back to 2019, but to possibly 2022 and responding to all the residents. But I had to get approval through this report here that we're going to move forward with this approach until we decide to modify it again. And the feedback form is in this package. So I do believe that will close out this and get rid of that vacuum where residents will get the data for their road, what took place, and what we plan to do with staff. And I think if we go back one calendar year from now, that will clean a lot of it up. And then anything that's older that we see there was a problem during COVID, we'll go out, get new data. And if that's still an issue, we will reach back out to the resident because we still have all of their information on file for any ones that we haven't addressed already. Does that satisfy your question?
I would like to see it in a Friday file as you do it so that we're all aware of it. So when we get a question from a resident, we're as informed as they are. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you for that. Moving on to 8.5, RPT-0161-23, Mile Hill Road, 2023 review and additional data. Mayor Bailey puts it on the floor, second by Councillor Howes. Questions? Councillor Miller, then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In that staff report, Rick Knapp's looking for additional information or data. Anyways, there's 5 options listed. A couple Paris residents actually mentioned maybe there could be a 6th option. So I'll bring this up as additional information. And the 6th option is maybe dead ending the road somewhere halfway up Mile Hill. I didn't think much of the idea until I thought about it, and so you can't use it as a thoroughfare except for emergency vehicles. It does get around that issue of some of the difficult driveways to pull in and out of. It's much safer for non-vehicle users because cars won't be racing down or up. They can only go halfway, and it's dead-ended, and it's fairly inexpensive. So I'm just throwing that out for maybe something that could also be considered.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, to staff, this is a really good report. I appreciated reading all the public input, all 61 pages of it. some repetition, and I think there were quite a few people that were supportive of changes. The one thing that comes out to me is even those people that don't want to see a change in the operation of the road recognise it's not a safe road for pedestrians or cyclists. And I think that's at the heart of what we have to address. I think we cannot afford to take a different stance other than doing things in the best interests of public safety. Safety should trump convenience, and a lot of the complaints back were about the inconvenience that the proposed solution would cause. And I think inconvenience, in my world, falls way behind safety. But that said, I think taking some time to get facts so that we can make informed decisions about the best way forward is a good thing to do, and I'm supportive of the proposal. There is an issue that I think we need to face. I raised this issue back, I think it must be a year and a half ago, when Russ Press talked about the Grand River cycling loop, and he showed it going up and down Mile Hill. And I said, it really is not a safe place to route a cycle route. Right now, we still have the signs at the bottom and at the top. It's still part of our transportation master plan that this is a cycle route. I think we have to recognize that all the feedback we get is saying this is not safe in its current form. So we, I believe, need to put some notification there to cyclists, to pedestrians, saying this is a risky road. If you're going to take this road, there's a risk you're going to have to bear. And I don't know how that plays out legally, but every piece of evidence says this is not a place where you want to go walking or cycling in its current form. So I'm going to leave that one with operations staff to deal with, possibly with legal staff to deal with. But I think as we're coming to the cycling season, we need to deal with it pretty quickly. I'd hate to put that road into use as part of the cycle loop and have an accident this coming year. So I would also like to hear from staff and probably from Greg what extra physical measures we can take this year while we're gathering data to actually improve the speed control on that road.
Greg?
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Bell. So we've done a lot of work since the public engagement. We've met with residents at their homes, and what we're proposing for this coming late spring, early summer is, and some works have already actually taken place. So I'll start with what we've done so far. We've upgraded the signage. We've added 2 digital speed boards that we've gotten good feedback from the local residents. It's making them aware, making them want to slow down, and wanting to make change. What also we're proposing for Washington Street is we're looking at speed cushions that are specifically designed to allow emergency vehicles to get through without having to slow down. We're also looking at spots where we can use them on Mile Hill at the top. And then we're also looking at the feasibility of center line knockdowns around the curves to ensure that people are staying in their lane and squeezing the road, making them slow down as they enter those curves. So these are all physical attributes that we can do in the short term that will not affect the direction of traffic. And when we do impose those mitigating circumstances, we're going to follow up and do a traffic study at a couple points during the year to see if this indeed is slowing people down like we did on Cobblestone. We did before, during, and after, so we had a clearer picture. So we will do the same for Mile Hill. And then we are also, to your earlier point, we are working with staff and the community group that has a cycling loop to look to see if there's alternatives. And then for further data collection, we're going to get really in depth and do some pedestrian counts and other counts 24 hours a day for a week to see what the actual pedestrian use is there. Lots of people say there's lots of pedestrian use. Some people say it's never used. So we're just going to go out and get the hard data and work from that.
One final comment, if I may, Mr. Chair. There is an urban myth. There is an urban myth that says there are never any accidents on Mile Hill. And the work that Michael Ballog has done in conjunction with the OPP reveals that in the last 5 years there have been 7 accidents on Mile Hill. and there have been a further 3 at the junction of Mile Hill and Power Line. So for all those people in that part of Paris that believe it isn't an accident area, it is, and that's why we're tackling it the way we are. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay, I would just like to point out there with, yeah, I read through all the questions and answers, and I appreciate the fact that, and as was alluded to earlier, these all went through Brant Safe Streets and they were all responded to. So I think that's huge, because that's putting something back to the folks that took the time to ask the question. They got responses to it. So I appreciate that work that's been done by all. No other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.6 RPT-0157-23 Paris Presbyterian Church Agreement. Can I get a mover? Councillor Howes, Councillor Coleman. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.7 RPT-167-23 Parking Bylaw Amendments and Housekeeping. Can I get a mover? Councillor Oakley, Mayor Bailey. Questions? Councillor Bell. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have spoken with Greg, so he's aware of the questions I have. First of all, I think thank you for taking a pragmatic, common sense view on parking. And I think it will help, although we're still going to be left with an awful lot of challenges now and as we go forward with new developments. So let me pick up on a couple of things. Apron parking. I asked the question of Greg, do we have an illustration of this? Because when I read the words, it wasn't entirely clear where the car would go on the apron. But Greg, you might just want to say what you've done or what's in the works to make that clear.
Through the chair to Councillor Bell, thank you for your comments. So yes, we have been investigating apron parking in the County of Brant, and what we found is that apron parking is commonplace in several other municipalities. We are working on a communication plan with corporate communications to get the message out there. We're in development of some pamphlets to show what's permitted for on-street parking, and if these proposals go through tonight, they will certainly form part of that pamphlet and that handout that we will be submitting to residents and posting online.
Thank you. The next comment is about Arlington Parkway, where in the report you talk about permitting parking on both sides of the road between certain points on the road. When you shared with me a drawing of what physically what difference that would make, I think I saw one extra parking spot on the south side. So in the interest of simplification and ease of communication, my suggestion was we just make the north side available for parking and don't touch the south side, because I believe we'll confuse residents. I believe we'll end up with people getting parking tickets unnecessarily. And I would like to make that as an amendment to the bylaws when it comes up for consideration. Your comment on that, Greg?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell. No, I agree. I think when we initially looked at it, we were contemplating two-sided parking. There are less restrictions on the south end. However, due to the proximity of the driveways, it's not possible for a lot of larger vehicles to be parking in between the driveways or the aprons. So there are some opportunities there if you have smaller vehicles, but in the true sense of the word for two-sided parking, it's probably not 100% accurate.
Okay. Final question to Greg and to the department, the DED department. I think this would be easier to share with the public if we were able to illustrate it with drawings. So show for each street, particularly in the south of Paris where we've had the biggest problems, what these changes would mean to them and where they could park. Because otherwise, Greg, your department's going to get inundated with all kinds of requests for enforcement action.
And through the chair to Councillor Bell. Oh, that's correct, and that is part of the plan. Is that we're going to do a blitz and ensure that the public is notified of what apron parking means and how it applies to them. I think we're going to have a strong messaging in the onset of these amendments, and then there's also going to be an education period where we're going to want to ensure that the public is aware of, you know, these changes.
Thank you.
Councillor Howes, you had any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.8 RPT-0158-23, the renaming of the Burford Optimist Pavilion. Can I get a mover? Councillor Miller, Councillor Coleman. Questions? Councillor Miller.
I just want to say thank you to Kathy for the report. I think it's a great name to pick, Dale Weatherby. I know Stephanie and the family approve, and I agree with the comments that came with the report. When you think about volunteerism, Dale Weatherby certainly stands tall among them, and he was always out there. You know, whether it's doing pancakes or helping out with the splash pad, he was truly a really solid volunteer. And I think in this day and age, where a lot of groups, service organizations are having trouble getting enough volunteers out to help out, I think this is an excellent reminder, you know, of why people should get involved. So fully supported.
Well said. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.9 RPT-0101-23, 2022 Transportation Master Plan Update. Can I get a mover? Councillor Bell? Councillor Oakley? Questions? Councillor Bell?
All right. I had so much time on my hands this weekend. So, I first want to say I reread the whole plan. It's a super document. It really is a very good document. It addresses so much. It's very comprehensive. It's also very challenging. And the area I feel most challenged by, and it keeps coming back to that junction over there, if you read volume 2 of the final report on page 9, it shows that the volume to capacity of all the roads downtown in Paris is greater than 1. So we're over capacity now. If you get to page 13 of volume 2, it says the Western Bypass route and related improvements are insufficient to address downtown Paris constraints. And yet we push the consideration of alternatives like a Paris East Bypass away until 2041. I believe we should be bringing the study of a bypass around the northern part of Paris, whether it's west or east, and by west I mean making it effective. And by west I am concerned that when we took this issue to the provincial government at the Roma conference, we just got waved away. They're just not interested, and I have no real confidence that we will get the junction at Bishopsgate anytime soon. So I think if we are going to do our job well as a council, looking forward, looking to the future, I think we need to have a study of routes around Paris from the north sooner rather than later. And I would like to make an amendment to the recommendation here that on item 19 in the report, which is the Paris East Bypass study, I'd like to generalise and say I would like to see a report on a bypass around the north of Paris in this term of council and not in 2041. And I'd look for a seconder.
Councillor Howe seconds that. Questions to that amendment? Councillor Miller.
Can you repeat the amendment, please?
Yeah. Councillor Bell.
I would like to see that we have a study of a bypass around the north of Paris during this term of council and not in 2041 as is currently indicated in the Transportation Master Plan. Given the time frame that getting such a thing as a bridge across the river will incur, we're talking about decades, or at least a decade and possibly longer. So we need to have an understanding now. Just think about the funding issues. We talked earlier about providing funding for a new hospital. We can see that's only 12 years away. We need to be thinking now about providing funds. Our long-term financial plan should address this, of course, but we need to have a sense of what our options are and whether we should, in fact, put the money in ourselves to build that junction at Bishopsgate, because we might wait forever for the provincial government to do it. And if we're going to do that, then we need to find, I don't know, $15, $20 million in our budget in the next 5-6 years. Otherwise, we're going to run into serious congestion problems downtown, as admitted to, as indicated by the Transportation Master Plan.
Mr. Walton, did you want to say something to this?
Through the chair to council. We've heard a lot about that particular intersection, and we have a report on here tonight, which actually gives it a fairly decent report card. We can't change what we did in the whole transportation master plan over one issue there, which we admit in time we'll have to have other changes on it. So the transportation master plan is a roadmap of where we are and where we need to be. And it's suggesting that by 2041 that there's a decision made on what other alternatives need to be done besides the west bypass to address this issue. This study to do that is, I don't even know what the number is, but it's a number that has seven figures in it. So we're over $1 million just to do the study. And quite frankly, right now, we've got our hands full of dealing with the MTO at Rest Acres Road and what we've got to do there in our negotiations there. We have had a meeting with senior staff from Queen's Park about the Bishopsgate interchange, just happened in the last week and a half. So there is some discussion going on. They didn't come with bags full of money, no, but there is discussion on what the partnership might be there in the future. And really those are, to me, our number one issues right now is getting that problem with the MTO sorted out as to what we're doing at Bishopsgate and what we're doing at Rest Acres Road. There is a roadmap there, and the roadmap is that in 5 years there will be a transportation master plan update. And if things have changed so dramatically then that we need to look at this more, it'll be identified then. But, it's kind of ironic that at this very meeting we have a report in front of us which says, actually, we're going to do $50,000 worth of improvements to tweak that intersection, which is operating at levels of service which are acceptable. So I think that it's this isn't a small ask of staff to undertake this. So I just want council to know that this is a big study, all kinds of other repercussions on this. People are really going to come out of the woodwork if we bring up, say, the East Bypass is the solution. All kinds of other issues associated with that. You got the length of time for the Dufferin Pit to be built out. What about the opinions of everybody else on Paris Road and whatever that might see this as the 424 eventually? I think that another high-level bridge in this area will be a major transportation corridor, not a local transportation corridor. So, there's other partners. So I think that the plan that we've set out here is very solid, and it addresses the things that are to be done now. It addresses what would be done. 5 years, there's going to be an update. That the timing of that could change at that time, but I can't see it changing now. Thank you.
Councillor House?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I'm respectful of staff who we've heard more than once tonight say that their hands are full. And that's real, and it's understandable. At the same time, thinking about the north end of Paris and thinking about the next 10 years, which would take us to 2033, nowhere near 2041, there could be 1,000 additional houses in the north end of Paris in the next 10 years. Maybe. And at least 748. So I completely support Councillor Bell's amendment to say that this study of a bypass, whether it's a eastern bypass, whether it's a bridge, who knows, whether it's emphasizing the western route, I think it's absolutely unreasonable that we're looking at 2041 before we see that. So I support the amendment completely.
Councillor Oakley, to the amendment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would like to mirror a lot of Councillor Howe's thoughts here. With it. Again, I respect staff's opinions and the work they've done here, but when I was out door knocking, I knocked on almost every single door in the ward. And at the beginning, I was going through and marking down every comment that someone made to me, writing down, where's the bridge? Where's the bridge? What are we doing about traffic? To the point where I actually marked down when people said they were happy with the traffic, which happened a few times, but was very, very rare. So I would say this is a burning issue that every single person in Paris has spoken to at some point. So I do support the idea of moving up some sort of study in regards to bypasses within the next 4 years, because it's a burning issue. There's hundreds of houses being built on both ends of town. And yeah, it's a major concern. So I would just like to say that I support the amendment.
Councillor Miller to the amendment, and then Councillor Coleman.
Yeah, I do question bringing up that tonight. Again, it's going to be a plus $1 million if you want to do a proper study. I mean, if you want a staff member doing it off the side of the desk, that's different, and then you get what you pay for. As the general manager of Public Works is pointing out, it's going to be reviewed in 5 years. I think there should be a cohesive effort to get that onto that next update and get some action plans in place. I don't support an amendment which we don't even know the price tag for to get to somewhere where we don't quite know where we're going, other than we want to see, something. I do know in the next 5 years too, as time develops, we're going to see a lot more pieces of the puzzle fall into place, whether that includes that interchange that we talked about, possibly a new 424. There's a lot of things coming together, and I would rather just do this all over the next course of the 5 years rather than do it tonight as an amendment to this. I don't think it's appropriate.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not support the amendment at this time. Excuse me. We just got 8.9 in front of us. Final report. It's here. We've been waiting a number of years for this. And I'm not going to throw this out and start over with another assessment at $1 million or plus. I'm more prepared to keep pushing on Bishopgate Road and whatnot to get that interchange in there. And if so be it, we have to do it, maybe we're going to have to do it. But I'm not going to throw, it's like Councilor Miller said, we're going to review this in 5 years' time, or it can be reviewed in 5 years' time. I'm not supporting this amendment at this time.
Councillor Chambers.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Miller and Councillor Coleman to amend, to propose amendment to a resolution that is accepting a transportation master plan report is questionable whether it's even in order or not. It should be a standalone motion, and if it's standalone motion, it should be accompanied by enough time that the staff can respond to it without having to respond on the spot in 3 minutes, especially since it's been said it's a 7-figure cost perhaps. The scope and magnitude, the terms of reference hasn't been determined or discussed or even talked about. I'm not sure what the study is being requested for. So either defeat the motion or table it until such time as staff can respond to it in the proper manner. I would prefer to not even have it put at this time, and it should be done by notice of motion as a standalone motion for an expenditure of over $1 million. That having been said, and I've heard it several times, and I say this very respectfully, but across the entire county, there is an infrastructure deficit that is enormous. We have gravel roads that are impassable sometimes in the spring and in the winter. Maybe some consideration should be done with regard to those issues. We have bridges that are in drastic need of repair. We have structures clear across the county that are not small ticket items. The infrastructure deficit is in the multi-million-dollar category. So to put forward an amendment at this juncture, which would gobble up $1 million of that perhaps in paper in terms of a study, is inadvisable, and I think, quite frankly, ill-conceived at this point. I agree that the studies have to be done, and it should be done, and 20,041 is too late. But to expect it to be done in a context of a resolution passed by council without an understanding of the complete picture is not fair to the staff, it's not fair to the council, and it's not fair to the residents across the county. So I encourage you to either withdraw the resolution and form it in the appropriate manner, or have the council or the committee defeat it. And I don't think that's what we want to do either, because it's an important consideration to be had. So, but I won't support it as an amendment.
So just, I'm going to get back to you here, Councillor Bell. Councillor Garneau, Councillor McAlpine, and Councillor Kyle. You haven't spoken to this. Is there anything you want to say as first time? No? Okay. Back to you for last comment, Councillor Bell.
So here we are, we're trying to approve a transportation master plan. And in that transportation master plan, it talks about a date for the study that I'm talking about in 2041. There is money in the total budget for this. I'm just talking about moving it forward because it makes sense to understand the issues now ahead of time, not in 2041. We need to understand them sooner than that. I'm not saying do it this year. I said in this term of council, so we've got nearly 4 years in which to do it. I'm not trying to put an extra load on the staff right at this moment. I don't think I can't understand why we would consider this to be out of order. It's just one of the many items in the transportation master plan. All I'm doing is moving it forward, or suggesting we move it forward in response to a perceived need. We heard tonight, I think it was Greg Demers said, this intersection was not built for 20,000 cars a day. Councillor Howes quite rightly says in the next 10 years there's probably going to be another 1,000, maybe 2,000 homes in the north, another 4,000 or 5,000 cars. There's going to be another 1,000 homes in the south, another 2,500 cars, times 2 ways. We might be talking about 35,000 cars a day going up and down this road. We need to understand that we're going to have a congestion problem. We can see it now. We don't need to wait to understand that it's coming, but we do need to be prepared, because the time frame in which these big infrastructure projects take place, and let's just use Bishopsgate as an example. When we went to see the Minister of Transportation, Brian said, I can remember coming here 7 years ago to ask about this. 7 years ago, and we haven't made a move forward, except where we've actually put the money up ourselves. So we are going to bury our heads in the sand unless we take action now. And all we're looking for is a study to scope it out, to understand the costs, the options. We're not making any decisions now. The money is in the budget. It's just a matter of moving it forward. So I do not wish to table this, and I do wish this to be voted on, and I do wish for it to be a recorded vote.
Last comment, Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if there's a comment, a suggestion. I guess I'm trying to find a way here to sort of meet in the middle a little bit with these things, and perhaps rather than going forward and ordering a report right now, if we could look to pass the Transportation Master Plan in principle with requests from staff to come back with a report in some regards, in acknowledging that 2041 is, I think we all agree, far too far away, some sort of interim time period that could work. People get what I'm aiming for here.
Well, I think I'm just going to add my 2 cents here. As was stated earlier, the Transportation Master Plan is going to be reviewed in 5 years. This term is 4 years, so we're almost to that 5-year review of the Transportation Plan. I'm curious if a year is going to make the difference in that. And don't get me wrong, I understand that I think we all agree the fact that we've all said it, 2041 is way far out, but I think, as Mr. Walton said, when the Transportation Master Plan is redone, that date could very well and probably will move forward. I'm not sure if it's better to start looking at it now, as Councillor Bell is talking about, and take the you know, the 4 years to look at it. So when the transportation master plan is redone, there's data that can feed into that to make a, I don't want to say a proper update because all the updates in it are proper, but to make a more accurate potentially update into the renewed master transportation plan in 5 years. So I'm stuck in the middle of this one. I understand that it needs to be done. I understand that it's not a small task, you know, work-wise and dollar-wise, but is it possible to get that something completed prior to the renewal of the transportation master plan? Rob?
Through the chair to committee. One thing I want to point out to council here is that all of the proposed development for Paris was, and the area was considered in the actual modeling that was done for the transportation area. And, you know, we proposed the west bypass, of which, you know, Bishopsgate interchange would be a great improvement to. Although the west bypass exists now, you can get on at Rest Acres. We know we've got those improvements to do at Rest Acres as well. And, you know, as we're dealing with the MTO now, we're seeing the cost increases of these projects go, you know, through the roof for the ones we're dealing with. So to say that you have to move this plan in here ahead of the 5-year review, to me would say you don't believe anything that's in the transportation master plan. Like, it was modeled by a very reputable consultant under the review by the county staff. You know, we've got another report here tonight which talks about the level of service at the intersection we keep referring back to. It's not level of service F everywhere. You know, I understand that people do not like to sit at a light at all, but we got to bring the reality back into these decisions, because it isn't just, as pointed out earlier, it isn't just the infrastructure we're talking about here. It's infrastructure everywhere. And we need to make these in a balanced and a planning type of decisions. And that's what's been done. The Transportation Master Plan is an independent consultant that did all the modeling. You know, we helped them to make sure that they understood everything that was going on around the county that impacted this, but they looked at that thoroughly. They came up with a plan. Is 2041 the date? No idea, but in 5 years, there's going to be a review of this, and we'll be reviewing, you know, the official plan will be reviewed in 5 years. All these things get to look at. They all need to dovetail together. And we start making decisions like this, it's the beginning of the, well, where do we go off track and do these other things? And that's up to council, but I strongly recommend that you go ahead with the plan, and in 5 years review it. If there's a major change in something in between then, it can be reconsidered then. But I think we've got a solid plan here. It looks at all of the things. And I think as I look back, I've been here, you know, nearly 6 years, so I haven't been here, wasn't here when the last transportation master plan was done, but I think that this one did a better job than in the past of tying together all of these EAs that we've been doing and putting the phase plan in there as to how we get from point A to point B and in the future as well. So I think we put an excellent plan together here. You know, as I said before, we've got our hands full of trying to get the Bishopsgate and the Rest Acres Road projects going. You know, we're taking the phone calls as well as councillors and other staff as to, you know, where developers are at and when they want their service and whatever here. And as I say, the price tag on those projects is going up. Thank you.
Okay, so we've had a lot of good discussion here. There is an amendment on the table, has been seconded. It's been called for a recorded vote. So we are going to call the vote on the amendment. Everybody is clear as what it is? Do we need it repeated? Okay. Madam Clerk?
All right, through the chair, I'm just going to go one by one. Councillor Garneau.
Against.
Sorry.
Come on.
Councillor Coleman.
No.
Councillor Miller.
No.
Councillor Shapers.
No.
Mayor Reilly.
No.
Councillor Bell.
Yes.
Councillor House.
Yes.
Councillor Oakley.
Yes.
Councillor McAlpine.
No.
Councillor Kyle. No. Councillor Pierce.
Yes.
Thank you, that's defeated.
Okay, the amendment is defeated. Councillor Miller?
Okay, I just, question about the transportation master plan. Just noting that there was 6 public comments, and I understand that that's all we had since it went live. And I just want to quote from the transportation master plan. Councillor Bell wasn't the only one that looked it over, read it over. In it, it states the transportation master plan, speaking of bridges, serves as the public's first notice of closure for the bridges identified in map 10. Now, I would assume, I know that's not a good strategy, but I would assume that that's not the only notice of closure for these bridges. But it should be noted, Mr. Chair, that there are 15 in all listed in the transportation master plan to be looked at to be closed. There's 8, over half are in Ward 4, and that would be 2 on concession 13, 2 bridges on the 9th concession, 2 bridges on Stage Road, 1 on Clement Road, 1 on the 12th concession. There's 3 bridges in Ward 1, Dumfries Road, Governor's Road, Howell Road. There's 1 in Ward 3, that would be Cleaver Road. And then there's 3 bridges in Ward 5 that are to be looked at, Newport Road, War Road, Brant Mill Road. And Mr. Chair, I am certainly not against looking at any infrastructure, whether it's needed or not. I always think that's a good idea, and there's criteria to be used. But this first notice of closure, I'm telling you, did not get out to the public because we would have had way more than 6 public comments. So just, I know when a bridge is up for closure, when they talked about it at AMO, it's serious business, and it's got to be done right. So at some point when they do come up to be looked at, I just maybe if through you, Mr. Chair, if we could get someone from staff to talk about, is there a process to go through, or do we have a process identified at this point to go through that? And how do we engage the public? Because, like I say, if all the public living near these bridges were aware, then we would have got far more than 6 public comment.
Mr. Walton?
Through the chair to Councillor Miller, I'm really actually glad you brought this up because I agree with a lot of what you said. But in looking at the infrastructure of any municipality, you have to look at what you've got and what you should keep for the long term. So I don't know if any of these bridges will actually ever be closed. And I don't think any of them, I think that the criteria we set in there is we're really not looking at closing until they get under 10-ton capacity as well. So I think it's a great thing that we did of notifying the public somehow that we're looking at this in the long term. It also notes in there some of these are duplicate bridges, like you couldn't close both of them, right? Because they would landlock property. So, you know, decisions have to be made as they come up. So we've got that criteria in there as to when we would look at them. I think there's a lot of them that like the Brant Mill Bridge, which could actually stay open as something long after they were closed to actual vehicles as well. So I think there's a process going forward. Before they were actually formally closed, we would go through a notification process and the like of with the county in general, but the local residents which were highly impacted by it. But us telling them that this is something that could be considered in the future is the first thing. Now, how do you get people out to the public meetings and how do you get them to follow them and whatever? That's another good question. We try our best to make that happen. But, you know, maybe you bring it up tonight. Some people around here will start talking to neighbors and they'll start reading it and we will get the consideration. But this is just the first notice. There's a whole other process that has happened before that happened. And I'd rather have it happen this way than what's happened at Brant Mill Bridge so far, which is, you know, we got that report which basically said that it was unstable. And I didn't actually close it that night, but I did close it the next morning at 7 o'clock when we had people in there to do it. And it's never been open to a vehicle since then. So this way we're looking at it ahead. We're following our OSIM every 2-year surveys as to what needs to be done there. And we'll be reporting back to council and saying, okay, this is the first one that's on the list of the 15 to be considered that we got to do some serious work on. And we need to have that serious discussion. So I think it's just the first part of it. And anytime we could have a discussion with those people and they would know it. And, you know, for their businesses and whatever, then to know that this is a potential what's coming. I think it's good. Thank you.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Rob, for that response. Like I said, I'm not against it. If it makes sense, it makes sense. As long as the criteria laid out, the public's consulted properly. But getting back to what Councillor Chambers said previously, we as a council need to look at the infrastructure across the whole county, not just certain areas.
Okay, any other questions to the report itself? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, that brings us to the end of staff reports. Before we go any further, I just want to say a couple of things here. First of all, thank you to staff. There was a ton of information. Not that there always isn't, but tonight's agenda, there was so much digestible information in there. And it's been noted a few times about getting a plan with corporate communications to get those out. And all we can do is just feed that information. And as was alluded to a few times, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and some of the pictures in these reports, tell exactly what is correct, what is not correct. So again, I just want to say thank you very much to staff. There's been a ton of work put into this. And again, not that there always isn't good information in staff reports, but these ones were out of the park. So I just wanted to note that and thank you very much. If anything we could get out through communications is only going to help us to answer a few questions and to inform our constituents. So thank you on that. Moving on to section 9, committee reports. There are 3 of them. Does anybody have any of them want to be pulled? Seeing none, can I get a mover for the 3 reports? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Miller. Any questions at all on any of them? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? They are carried. Communications. Anybody, 10.1 and 10.2, any questions on either of those? Anyone want those pulled? Can I get a mover? Councillor Howes? Seconder, Mayor Bailey. No questions? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Other business, we have Councillor Chambers. You had a question for other business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the General Manager of Public Works. He's had a lot of questions tonight. I would request an update on the status of the roundabouts in Falkland, particularly as it relates to a couple issues. First issue is that the residents along there are anxiously waiting for a completion so that they can have their mail service restored appropriately rather than the box at Pelton's. Secondly, there's been a lot of discussion and criticisms about the size of the roundabouts, in particular as it relates to truck traffic. If you look at the aprons, you can see that the truck trailers are encroaching on the apron by as much as 3 meters, perhaps, almost using the entire apron to make the circle around, which indicates that perhaps they are undersized, is what people are telling me. So there's that aspect of it. And the second aspect is, or the third part of the question is a completion. I see they're out there today doing some shoveling, but a completion date when they will be completed.
Through the chair to Councillor Chambers, I'll answer the last question first. They actually did start work this week, and actually their schedule was to start next week. But why wouldn't they come out and work now when the weather is unbelievable for construction right now? Actually, so they have started. I was actually just talking to Joe Murphy today. We would anticipate this project should be completed, maybe some restoration a bit after that, but probably by the end of May, early June, that we should have completion of the project. And at that time, yes, then the mail would go back to what it was. The size of the roundabouts, that's come up a couple of times, and actually our own operations staff went out with the designer and our infrastructure staff to look at a couple of things out there, and there were a couple of the bullnose pieces, whatever, they changed a little bit in the design, nothing really substantial. But the aprons and your 53-foot trailers, those are designed for them to actually go onto a bed. And part of this is the whole, you know, the way that this thing's called the chicanes, the way they make them, the turn and whatever, that's the traffic calming part of this. That there's nothing wrong with them, the trailing wheels of those going onto the aprons. I'm not sure that they should be going on 3 meters, but for sure, but that'll be a driver inexperience with them that's taken the corner too sharp would be my guess. But that question has directly been posed to our consultant and to our infrastructure staff, and along with our operations people, they've been out there and they've looked at them. So the design is a standard design, and they're certainly since they're single lane, they don't have the options you have on the Rust Acres one, where trucks often will actually drive up the middle of the 2 lanes, right? So then they don't hit on the inner apron at all.
Councilor Chambers?
And we're past the point of changing them right now.
Go ahead.
Any update on the postal service?
Yeah, through the chair to Councilor Chambers. Yeah, the postal service should be restored after, like that would be one of the last things of restoration of the boxes would go back.
And just a comment with regard to trucks going around the roundabouts, it is unusual for the roundabouts that I've driven around for the trailers to encroach considerably onto the apron. There's always some, but if you look at the tracks, whether it's a result of it not being completed or whether it's a smaller roundabout than many of them, I'll let the engineers respond to that.
And Councilor Miller, you had something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Allison, perhaps. I just wonder if there's any update on Nat Gas to Glen Morris and Harley at Roma in February. A representative Enbridge we're told that there would be some announcement relatively soon. Here we are, April. I'm just wondering if you have heard anything.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I haven't personally heard anything, updates on that, but I believe Zach Gable, who's here, has had recent conversations with Enbridge, so I'll let him answer.
Through the chair to you, Councillor Miller. Yeah, economic development staff has been keeping an ongoing dialogue with Enbridge, and at this point in time, they're still doing some modeling of their own system to figure out exactly what the costs might look like. I know they're anticipating the natural gas expansion program coming back as well, but until they're done this modeling, they don't really understand if it's something feasible that could just go ahead under the National Energy Board, or if they need provincial or other funding to make it happen. So we're still talking with them on what that system might look like.
Councilor Miller?
Okay, thank you, Zach, and we just wanted to get you to say something tonight too, so appreciate it.
Okay, those were the only two that mentioned they had something other on their business, so nobody else? Okay, moving on. Nothing in camera. And our next meeting is May.
It's a little bit different because we switched up the structure.
Next meeting is May 16th, by the looks of it. May 16th is the next meeting. It's not quite 8 o'clock, Mr. Coleman, so I don't think we can call for adjournment yet, can we?